Hello everybody, TheChrisDex here, and here I'm holding an ancient relic. It's older than the pyramids, older than Stonehenge, even older than Adam and Eve. The Nintendo 3DS. Yep, this fossil right here gave me tons of great memories. Being able to take your favorite games on the go was always thought to be amazing, even back when the Game Boy and the Atari were coming out. So I thought we should take a look at handheld gaming consoles through the years. In the meantime, I'm gonna go put this thing back where I found it. Legend has it that if you use a 3DS in 2019, you'll be cursed with eternal double vision. Why are there two cameras? Well, looks like it's that time of year again. Summer is here and that can only mean one thing. Time to talk about handheld gaming consoles for 12 minutes. When most people hear console, they usually think about the ones you plug into your TV and play Call of Duty all night until you realize, I have school tomorrow. I'll just show the teacher my KD ratio, she'll understand. But I usually think of the consoles you take with you when you go out or you want to play at night under your blanket. Handheld consoles are some of the most influential gaming devices ever made. Decades ago, it was impossible to think that you could play games on a small device and not be connected to anything. Unless you're the Switch, which has 3 hours of battery life, so I have to bring a battery pack wherever I take it and I always have to bring the cord. I mean, I love the Switch, it's perfect, nothing wrong with it. Well, before we reached the era of the Switch, there were some other portable devices out there. Now, none of them were advances now, but for their time, they were impressive. It was like going from Mario Kart 8 to Mario Kart Tour. A bad example, never mind. But handheld consoles did have a humble beginning with Mattel Electronics. The same Mattel that made Hot Wheels, Barbie, also made Mattel Auto Race. F the DS, this is where it's at. The system consisted of a small screen with lights representing your car and other oncoming cars. Your goal was to reach the top of the screen 4 times, and doing that would make you the winner. What did you win? Well, if you're a fan of the Soviet Union, copying the Mattel, then that's your prize right there. This was the first documented handheld console. It only cost $25, so it was super cheap at the time. But I mean, a DS costs around $15 now, making it cheaper than the Mattel Auto Race, so it's not exactly worth buying unless you're a hipster or a collector. Same thing, really. But this would be overshadowed by Mattel Football, which would be insanely popular. This was pretty much Madden with lower graphics, but at least it didn't take up 30 minutes at E3. The device had 7 buttons, 6 of which you would use to control the player. The goal was to get your player across all the opposing players and score a touchdown, and then after that you would, well, I mean, that was pretty much it. You just did that over and over again until your fingers start hurting and you get diagnosed with Mattel Footballitis. Lost many brave soldiers to that disease. We didn't lose any, I made that up, but it still could happen. I get why this was popular because games like Madden didn't exist, so this was the only way people could play a football game. This would launch other Mattel games for sports such as basketball, baseball, soccer, soccer 2 if you prefer soccer with the number next to it. While the Mattel may not compare to modern devices, they were still fun and cheap, so you weren't really losing anything. And hey, it was either this or brain damage, and I know what the obvious choice was. Yep, that was a fun time. But then would come the end of the 80s and the Game Boy and the Atari Lynx were released. With the NES being insanely popular, Nintendo thought it would be a good idea to dip their toes in the handheld market. The Game Boy was revolutionary at the time, being able to play Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 on the go was groundbreaking. This little baby went on to sell millions of copies even though it faced heavy competition at the time. Some of the competitors were the Game Gear, the Lynx, and whatever this is. The competitors weren't bad either, with the Game Gear being a portable version of the Sega Master System. The problem with it was that it didn't get anywhere near as much support as the Game Boy it did, and it just got blown out of the water. Hey, but you could play Land of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse. Yep. I'm being sued for $500 million for mentioning a Disney property in a YouTube video? That might be an issue. As for the Atari Lynx, it wasn't great either. It only sold 3 million units due to having a poor library of games, a bigger design, and costing $180. I can buy 2 Game Boys with that, or I can use $90 to buy a trash can I can throw the Lynx in. The thing that set the Game Boy apart were the games. Being able to play Mario on the go was crazy. Also, the fact that this console would also have the biggest media franchise of all time might have helped. We would also get some variations for this device with the release of the Game Boy Pocket, which was a smaller, lighter version of the original Game Boy, which had a black and white display instead of the greenish tint of the original. And then we had the Game Boy Color. Before this came out, everything in the world was black and white, but with the release of the Game Boy Color, we finally saw color for the first time and it was amazing. Being able to get color on a Game Boy was great, and even more for the fact that it fixed a lot of the issues with the original. The quality of the screen was much better and the light didn't make the screen weird. The design was much better looking and comfortable in my opinion. The games were also great with a bunch of original games for it, including Pokemon Gold and Silver, but the fact that you could play games for the original Game Boy made it so that you had a huge library of 576 games. Wow, that is a lot of games that aren't Tetris for the Game Boy. The device was discontinued in March 2003, with the last game released for it in North America being Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Sony released a Pocket Station, which could be used to unlock extra content in PlayStation games. You would plug it into the console and then you would be able to take little mini games with you on the go. It was only released in Japan, and thank God, because if they brought it over to the West, then maybe they would have released a more upgraded version. Fuck me, man. But before we talk about portable diarrhea, there's some other notable portable consoles. Sega was just killing their portable games market, and this time the victim was the Sega Nomad. There's a pun there somewhere, but I'm gonna keep my soul, so I'm not gonna say it. This was pretty much a portable Genesis. It didn't have its own library of games, it just played Genesis games, and it suffered from that. Sega refused to support their portable consoles, and that's why they never rivaled Nintendo in that industry. Or in any industry. Or in games. But hey, the Nomad played Sonic. Sonic on a Sega console, who would have guessed? You know, because Sega doesn't make consoles anymore. Starting in the early 2000s, we would see the release of the Game Boy Advance and the Game Boy Advance SP. These would be the next and last original Game Boys made. What made this console so great was that it was able to play original Game Boy games and brand new ones. Although some of the games didn't look as neat ported over to the Advance, it still was fun because you could get some use out of your old games. And if I can't play Wendy every which way on every console I own, then what's the point? Then they would release the Game Boy Advance SP, which would be the first handheld console with a rechargeable battery. The design was also very different, and it would resemble the console that came after it. The screen was also front-lit, so you could see much better, and it would sell 43 million units. All that for 2 letters at the end, huh? Then would come Sony's first real attempt at the portable gaming industry. The PlayStation Portable, also known as the TheChrisDex's childhood. I'm the only one who calls it that, but it still works. I know not too many people would like this device, but I love it. The controls were so smooth, the UI was really good for the time, and it had a solid library of games even if it wasn't Nintendo level. There were many games that people played that were really popular, but the ones I liked were less known. I really liked Virtual Tennis 3, Toy Story 3, I'm sensing a pattern here. Yeah, even though it didn't really compete against Nintendo consoles, it does hold a special place in my heart. How about that DS though? This would be the biggest console of all time. It was so special. It had a huge library of games, it had multiple features that were completely new at the time, and PictoChat! That, my friends, is how you become the highest selling console of all time. This was the first system to ever use the dual screen, which made it so games would have to use both of them in order to work. It kept the same clamshell device as the Game Boy Advance SP, and it even supported GBA games. With a cool camera that gives you many weird effects, download played which will let your friends play a game with you even if they don't own the game, and the stylus. Look at this shit! It doesn't have a stylus, it's useless! What's that? You want another Game Boy a year later? Well, here's the Game Boy Micro. Yeah, this was released in case the DS didn't sell well, so they would still have a successful console. This was just a very small Game Boy. It looks like they cut off the lower half of the DS. The Game Boy Advance SP would get another re-release with a backlit screen, and then we would get the DS Lite. This would be a smaller version of the DS with some more features and would keep the backwards compatibility with the Game Boy Advance, but yeah, I also love it when my games stick 2 feet out of the system and make the console look hideous. Besides that, they moved the start and select button to the bottom of the console, so if you were a hardcore fan of keeping the start and select buttons above the console, then you must have been f***ing mad. And the PSP got a smaller redesign. Nintendo must have been trembling. We would also get the DSi, which is even smaller than the DS Lite, and it had a camera. But this would make it so GBA games were no longer compatible with the system. I do understand why they did this. In order to keep interest for their current generation, they would have to stop selling games for their previous system. But hey, you can do weird ass effects with the DSi camera, always forgiven. And PlayStation were... Well, now I know I can't go to sleep at night. We really should have known how much a failure the Vita was gonna be. After this came the 2010s, and that meant we would get the Nintendo 3DS, which would usher in a new era of some hella ugly looking ass 3D. The 3DS would be a direct successor to the DS and came with some neat upgrades. You can now play games with higher quality graphics, there's a circle pad, a cool AR feature, and Mii Maker. The launch was a bit rough though, it didn't have nearly enough games to warrant people buying it. Guess Kid Icarus Uprising isn't enough for some people, what a sad world we live in. But more high caliber games were released later down the line, like Smash Bros and Pokemon X and Y. The console was great, it did everything it should have for a DS successor. It had a great library of games, some fresh new ideas that would be used in consoles that followed it. And that's for Sony. Oh boy, where to start with this thing? How would I go and light a trash can on fire? That should tell you everything you need to know. Now to be fair, this console wasn't terrible, it was actually fairly well received in its first week, and then came every week after that. This thing was a flop, and it's pretty easy to see why. The UI was bad and it's hard to navigate. The library of games is pretty bad, even though it had backwards compatibility with the PSP. I don't think Neptunia Rebirth is enough to warrant buying this console, and it just didn't get enough attention. The only reason people talk about it now is to use it as a joke. Kinda like I'm doing right now. Now I do think there are some good ideas here, like being able to stream PS4 games on it, but it just failed at everything else. The Vita was discontinued on March 1st, 2019, and we finally saw the sun that day. Now with the PS5 coming out soon, it might be time for Sony to try and make another portable console. Or just re-release the PSP, that could work too. After that we would get the 3DS XL, a larger version of the 3DS, and it would be a much needed upgrade. We would get the Nvidia Shield a bit after that, and this was interesting. It was pretty much just a phone connected to an Xbox controller. It allowed you to play PC games on it, so you can play anywhere in your house. It's since been discontinued and replaced with the streaming box, and there aren't enough of those. The Nintendo 2DS let you play 3DS games at a cheaper price and not in 3D. The design was a bit weird, it made it harder to fit in your pocket, but for a cheap price it's decent enough. This was mostly for kids who wanted to play but didn't want to spend $200 on motion sickness. After that we got the new 3DS XL with a C-Stick, better 3D, Xenoblade Chronicles 3D, and a dumbass name. Yeah, I see what they were going for with this console was a noticeable upgrade over the original 3DS, and it kept the sales up, but ultimately I just felt like it didn't do enough to warrant upgrading from a 3DS. But in 2017 we would get the Nintendo Switch, the ultimate hybrid. This will let us play in handheld mode and as a home console. Yeah, this is the perfect device right here, it lets you play any game however you want. This console might have started slow with there only being a couple games worth buying at the start, but looking at it now, it's not the Wii U and that's all that matters. Yeah, that would pretty much be the history of handheld or portable consoles. Wait, what? There's one more? Oh. So did you like the 2DS but wish it was a 3DS? Here you go. This was the last console in the 3DS family to be released and it was fine. It kept the good parts of the 2DS and gave it a 3DS design at a cheap price. Yeah, so that was pretty much the history of handhelds, and god do I love these consoles. I know some people don't love that the graphics might be lower quality on here, but the fact that you can play these almost anywhere makes up for it. And I think that if more companies take the path of the Switch, we might have some great handhelds in the future. Wow, so many amazing and innovative consoles. It's no wonder that handheld devices are so popular. And speaking about that, someone sent me a surprise package. They said it was a handheld device. They said it was some type of gamepad. Oh. Well, I'm gonna go wash my hands and then put them in a wood chipper.